Hi everyone, I hope you're doing as okay as you can be given current circumstances. As I mentioned in my previous video, my aim at the moment is to upload more videos than usual, so at least 2 a week. If you are able to support my channel on Patreon, that would be amazing. I will leave a link in the description box down below if you would like to check that out. But today I wanted to recommend some books to you. If you have any video requests, by the way, please leave them in the comments section down below. Many of you would ask me to do a, if you like this book, you may like this book. So a recommendation video like that, which I've done before. And I do plan to do one of those in the future as well. But what I wanted to do today was book maths. I think I've done this before. Other people have certainly done it on YouTube. I thought I'd done a video like this, but I couldn't find it. So maybe I have, and I named it something that made it difficult to search for. I don't remember. But essentially book maths is a little bit like it, if you like this, you will like this. But it is taking elements from one book and elements from another book and saying, if you like that thing and that thing, then you will like this. So that book plus that book equals this book. And the reason I wanted to do that one today is because sometimes when you read a book, it really reminds you of specific things, and I had that this week. Essentially, I thought I'd come up with the best bookish sum. So I would like to share that one with you and 9 others, so 10 in total, and I would love you to write your own bookish sums in a comment down below. So first off, if you take The Accidental by Ali Smith, which is about a woman called Amber who invades the lives of all the members of one family and she finds out all of their secrets. If you take that and then you take The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters, which is an atmospheric gothic story set in an old house, and then you mix it sounds more like a recipe than a sum, same difference. If you mix it with a little bit of Fleabag, the TV show, then you will get this, which is The Bass Rock by Evie Wyld. I will speak about this in my next monthly wrap up. I read it this week. It is by far my favorite book of this year. It is just so wonderful. I've adored all of her previous books, but this one is the best out of all of them. It's set across 3 time periods, and it's all about women and the ownership of their bodies and their relationships with men and power. So in the 1700s, Sarah is accused of being a witch. Just after the Second World War, Ruth has married a man whose wife recently died, and he has 2 young sons. And in the present day, Vivian is clearing out her father's house, which is Ruth's stepson. They're all connected by the Bass Rock, which is a small island just off the coast of Scotland, which is continually battered by the sea. The Fleabag section's in the modern day section because Vivian's relationship with her sister is very Fleabag-like. Ruth's sections really reminded me of The Little Stranger as well, and there's a ghostly element to all of these stories. I adored it. So that's my first bookish sum. My second sum, if you take Grief is a Thing with Feathers by Max Porter, which is a riff on Ted Hughes's character of Crow. Crow in this instance is grief masquerading as a bird, and he arrives at a family's house. The family's mother/wife has recently died, and he is there to yell at them, to be grief, to shout at them, to make them feel everything. And if you mix that with Bluets by Maggie Nelson, which is a strange memoir, poetic experiment looking at the colour blue, then you end up with The Crying Book by Heather Crystal, which is set out like Maggie Nelson's texts in that they are paragraphs where she jumps from thought to thought, to memory to academic discussion, and this is all about grief and loss. Sum number 3, if you take Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, I don't think I really need to give you a summary of Frankenstein. If you take Frankenstein by Mary Shelley and you mix it with Children of the New World by Alexander Weinstein, which is about modern technology and the lengths to which people will go to create AIs, etc. And Salt Slow by Julia Armfield, which is about the body and changing bodies and how those interact with fairy tales, then you will get Frankenstein by Jeanette Winterson. This is a modern day Frankenstein that looks at gender, sexuality, body, and the extreme nature of AI. Next sum, if you take Houses by Nikki Walshinger, which is a poetry collection where each poem looks at a different coloured house. So a seafoam house, a mustard yellow house. The colours used in each poem is so playful, it makes each poem feel like a painting, but at the same time, as well as being stunning, these poems are also looking at societal divisions. It's talking about racism, classism. If you take this book and then you add that to Lowborn by Kerry Hudson, which is a memoir about growing up without any money in the UK, traveling around from place to place, add those two together, then you get Surge by Jay Bernard. Jay's poetry collection examines the New Cross fire of 1981 when 13 young black teenagers were killed. There was a lot of blame placed on them and indifference in society. And in this, they examine with rightful fury how different the investigation would have been had it been 13 young white teenagers who had died instead. Next, If Nobody Speaks of Remarkable Things by John McGregor, which looks at all of the tiny moments in one street when an accident happens. It goes from door to door, just focusing all the intricate things that people are doing, the moments that will become significant later but aren't as they're happening. And then you add that to Ordinary People by Diana Evans, which again is about little intricate moments. It's about couples whose lives are unraveling, living in London, and all the things that they don't say to each other. And then throw in a little bit of For Today I Am a Boy by Kim Fu, which is about a young trans woman called Audrey who is trying to persuade her parents, who are Chinese immigrants living in Canada, to accept her for who she is and not their idea of the Canadian man they wanted her to grow up to be. If you add all of those things together, then you will get A Place, I forgot the title for a second, A Place for Us by Fatima Farheen Mirza, which if you've been around here a while, you will know this was my favourite book of 2018. This is about an Indian American Muslim family. It's about all the members of that family and all of the tiny moments that has made them who they are. It is the most wonderful tapestry. It is slow, but it is moving and captivating. I'm still in awe over how this book was crafted. Next, if you take Sight by Jessie Greengrass, which is all about inheritance, motherhood, body, and the history of medicine, and you add that to Liz Berry's chapbook, The Republic of Motherhood, which is small but mighty, all about the rawness of new motherhood, then you will get this, which is Constellations by Sinead Gleeson. This is about medicine and how female pain is viewed. It's about spending time in hospital as both a child and an adult. This is a memoir, and what it's like to live a dual existence between being a person who has to go to all of these appointments, have operations and procedures, and being a person also who's trying to ignore those things or distance themselves from those things when they're trying to fit in with other people around them, trying to conform to society's expectations of, healthy and passing and all of that. It's a really complex look at our relationships with our bodies, and it's also about motherhood as well. If we take Bestiary by Lily Huang, which is a non-fiction book that looks at relationships, how fairy tales affect our expectations of relationships, the stories that we tell ourselves, and ownership of voice. And then we add that to Night Sky with Exit Wounds by Ocean Vuong, which is a poetry collection that is about queerness and body. Then we end up with Flesh by Mary Jean Chan. This is a poetry collection that I read last year and really loved. Like the two books I mentioned that you could add together to produce this book baby, it is about queerness and body and ownership, but it's also about being bilingual and about navigating different spaces, both in body and in language. If you take When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit by Judith Kerr, which is an autobiographical novel about the author having to flee Germany in the 1930s because her father was outspoken against Hitler. Their family lived in Switzerland, France before moving to England, and you add that to This Is the Place to Be. I couldn't remember if it was This Is the Place or This Is the Place to Be. This Is the Place to Be by Laura Pawson, which is a non-fiction book about growing up in war-torn countries. You add those two things together, then you get Confession with Blue Horses by Sophie Hardick. This is about a family who grew up in East Berlin during when the kids were young, in the late 1980s, and then it's set in 2010 as well. And the daughter is going back to Berlin to try and find out what happened to her mother because her parents were captured when they were trying to flee from East to West Berlin. If we take The Vegetarian by Han Kang, which is translated from the Korean by Deborah Smith, it is about bodies blooming after trauma, like literally blooming and flowers growing out of bodies. If we take this and then we pair it with The Dumb House by John Burnside, which is about a man called Luke who wants to dissect bodies in order to locate the soul, then we end up with Earthlings by Siaka Murata. This isn't out until the autumn, so as I'm filming this you can't purchase it, but I would recommend reading Convenient Store Woman by the same author if you haven't done already. They have similar themes, both are translated from the Japanese by Jenny Tapley Takamori. In Earthlings, it is really about what happens to people if they are treated as less than human, if they believe themselves to be less than human, and uses magical elements, magical realist elements to transform them, to help them evolve into something else to escape their pain. If you take the fairy tale of Snow White and add that to the novel Ponty by Charlene Teo, which is set across different time periods, different generations, and is about the relationships between jealous mothers and their daughters. If you add those two books together, then you get Strike Your Heart by Amelie Nothomb. This is translated from the French by Alison Anderson, I think. Yes, Alison Anderson, and this is about a woman called Diane whose mother is extremely jealous of her and treats her badly when she's younger. So we look at her from a fairy tale point of view, and I say that not because it's magical, but because it has that detached element. It's as though Diane is narrating her life without it being her life. She's talking about the relationship that she had or didn't have with her mother, and then exploring all of the relationships that she has with women as she's growing up and in her adult life. Finally, if you like Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, which is about complex relationships of all kinds, it's so messy. It has the humour of Greta Gerwig's Frances Ha. So if you like that, and then you add that to Hera Lindsay Bird by Hera Lindsay Bird, which is a poetry collection, and these poems are hilarious. They're really, really funny. Definitely a similar humour to Sally Rooney. One of these poems is about why she hates Ross from Friends. It's my favourite ever in that collection. If you add those two books together, then you get Mrs. Gaskell and Me by Nell Stevens. This is a book that refuses to fit into one genre box. This is about Nell exploring the life of Mrs. Gaskell and writing about her in an academic setting, and her relationships with her husband, but also someone else that she met when in Rome, and comparing that with her own relationships in her life as she's writing this academic paper. It's really insightful, it's really funny, it's really warm. So those are all of my book sums. I will link all of the books that I've mentioned in the description box down below. I would love to know what book sums you can come up with in the comments section down below. And as I mentioned at the beginning, if you are able to support me on Patreon, that would be wonderful. Please do leave any video requests in the comments section as well. I hope you're all doing okay. I love you very much, and I'll see you very soon. Lots of bookish love. Bye.